Hello, everyone. So I'm doing the presentation for you. So sorry about the link that was broken earlier. Um, this is basically the presentation. So I hope this will give you a bit of a better understanding around what it means to be a trauma-informed organization. So we will speak a lot on what trauma is so that you can have a better understanding of what it is. And throughout the process, throughout the talk, I want you just to be aware that there's two aims that we are trying to get to. The one is for you to have a, a better understanding around what trauma is. And number two is to have more compassion towards yourself and the people around you. And that will create the safe environment that you are seeking so that you can become a trauma informed organization. Okay. So do get your pen and paper together because it's going to be quite quick going. We've got a lot to get through, and I want to make it really worth your while. So let's get going. Okay, so what is trauma? That's the first thing we want to talk at. And I would like you to think of this as well, I hope at the end of this slide, at the end of this talk, that you will, instead of saying, what is wrong with you, you'll start asking, what happened to you? Okay. So there's a big shift in that feeling, right? When you say those words, when someone annoys you or you get angry with them, and you always say, what is wrong with you? So how can we instead say, what happened to you? Okay. So trauma is an adaptation of undigestible life experiences that individuals encounter when they lack the capacity, the facility, or the resources to manage this traumatic event effectively. Okay. So trauma is not a disorder, it's not an identity, it's an adaptation of your behaviors and comes from an event or a series of events that was scary, traumatic for you. And perhaps you were not able to digest the experience because you didn't have the capacity or the resources to manage this traumatic event effectively. Okay. So you've all heard the story about the twins who were separated at birth and they come together after 30 years and they find that they are similar in a lot of ways, but they are also quite different. So, what was that? So, you will see when I discuss the different kinds of trauma that there is, the one side, they would have shared the womb with their mum, right? So they would have had the preconscious trauma that they would have shared. And so some traits would pass on to them. And the same with intergenerational trauma. It's called the epigenetic gene. So it's not hereditary, but it's just a gene that adapts and it passes on to the next generation where it gets triggered in the soma in the body, in the sense, in the felt sense. Okay, so they might also see that maybe the one twin is much more confident and strong, and the other one is a bit more uh, temper tantrums, etc., getting angry quite quickly. And when they look at it, the one who's experiencing temper tantrums or anger had perhaps a traumatic childhood. And there was not a stable adult in the area to help and support the person. Okay. If we look at the person on the other side who's happy and strong, they perhaps had the resources. So there was an adult in the environment that was supportive and able to care for the young person. Okay. So that is basically trauma. Trauma is not um, the event, it's how we respond to the event. Okay. So there's this thing called the trauma loop, which we talk a lot on when I do the training. And the trauma loop is we in our bodies, in our felt sense, we have got probably about hundreds of open loops in our bodies. Okay, so this is when a traumatic experience happens. We experience fright, and we were not able to move through the system. And I'm going to show this to you now. Okay, so let's just look at trauma. What is trauma? It's the nervous system. So trauma, the whole thing happens around the nervous system. It's how we think, feel, behave. It all gets stuck in our nervous system that expand and project to the next field. So we experience something scary, attack our nervous system, and then what happens? We go into the stored emotional energy, or the survival stress. Now, the survival stress is supposed to be short-lived. Okay, so it's supposed to just go like lots of energy. Something happened. We either go into the freeze response, or we go into the um, fight or flight response, and then go into the calm nervous system. So that's how you're supposed to be. But most people get stuck there at the stored emotional energy field, survival stress, and it just stays there. Okay, so the loop never finishes, it doesn't complete. And what happens then, we create painful narratives. Okay, so I talk about when I was a little girl. I was 5 when my mum committed suicide. Okay, so at that time, I didn't have the capacity, I didn't have the resources to deal with this traumatic event, right? So it's a traumatic event that happened to me and attacked my nervous system, lots of stored energy. And from there on, because I didn't have the adequate resources, I created painful narratives. So stories started coming from, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth loving, no one will stick around for me. That's not fun stories, right? That's not stories of worth. That's stories of pain. And that's not all true, right? Because that's can't all be true. Um, so I just want to stress this point is that when we talk about the resources, so it's normally an adult, a healthy adult that is able to be there to support you through the process. Now, this is not a blame game, okay? So we're not here to blame our parents or blame the people, whatever was part of the process. That's not the point of this. Definitely not here to blame ourselves either. The whole process is just for you to understand what is going on in your body so that you can have a deeper sense of appreciation of who you are and why you do things that you do. Okay. So, because I created this painful narratives, I didn't like that and I didn't agree because, there's one thing telling yourself a story because that's the only story that you know. But when you know there's a different version out there and they conflict with each other, one of them's got to go. And that's where the orphan parts come in. Okay, so the orphan parts, the part of you that you don't like, you don't want to, you pretend that it's not there. So a hurt, scared version of me is not the version that I like. I like to pretend that I'm powerful, that I'm strong, that I'm vivacious, that I can handle anything. So an orphan part of me is I orphaned my soft, gentle, broken little heart and let that hide that away. Okay. So what happens is the repeated patterns and triggers come up. Okay. So say for instance, I send a message to a friend and I say, let's go out for dinner. And my friend doesn't respond to me. I think, uh-oh, there goes my fled. Nervous system goes into shutdown again. I'm not loved. I'm not worth loving. I'm not worth being around. No one likes me. That whole thought process comes back into a loop, attacks my nervous system, and I'm going all the way through again. Okay, so it's not true, right? Well, I hope not. It's not true, but it's because of that story that I told and the undigested trauma that was not dealt with. Okay, so that is what trauma is, and that's how it works. This is a fantastic visual for you to see what happens in the body. And I know we're spending a lot of time in this field, but I think it's essential for us to understand what happens to us when we go through a traumatic experience so that we can have a better understanding of who we are and stop blaming ourselves and the people around us. Just have a bit of a deeper understanding and a compassion towards ourselves and say, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. It's just you haven't been able to deal with it. So, how do you release that trauma out of your body? Okay. So, there's physical exercises that you can do. Obviously, I'm a trauma release therapist that supports my clients through that process. So we do a range of different things, and we do often quite work with the subconscious mind through hypnosis. And essential is the acupuncture to help with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the acupuncture that I use is the NADA detoxification acupuncture, and it touches on the lungs as well as the kidneys and the liver, but it also um, control the sympathetic nerve and the parasympathetic nerve. So just bring it into homeostasis response where you're like just coming home. You can breathe. Okay, you're back into your safe space while you deal with the situation that you need to deal with. Okay, so when you go through a traumatic event, so the first thing that happens to you, your whole body freezes. So it's like, and this is part of the oldest nervous system in your body, which is part of they call it the reptilian brain. And you'll see when reptiles gets attacked if you've seen documentary movies, they just play dead. Okay, so this is what happens to us. We play dead. So go in the freeze zone, and then remember I talked about the loop. The next stage you're supposed to go through is going to the fight or flight. So you're supposed to fight back, or you're supposed to run away. So that you can get to the bottom part, which is the social engagement, the ventral vagus state. That's your safety. That's like, the nice deep breath. Like, okay, I'm home, I'm safe. Okay. So what happens is freeze, going to fight or run away, and then finding the safe space. But a lot of time, we are unable to move away from the freeze zone because we've not had the resources. And if we stay there for too long, that's when overwhelm comes in. Disassociation, helplessness, depression, shutdown. You're feeling hopeless, trapped. There's nothing that you can do. That's like the worst space where you are sitting in, and you need to get back into the fight or flight zone so that you can move through that and get into the social engagement, the ventral vagal nervous system stage. Okay, that's where you're curious, you're open, you're compassionate and mindful. Okay. So before we carry on, I just want to talk a little bit more about the fight or flight. Um, this is really, really important to remember, and this is something that we do. It's been done to us, and we're doing it to our children, and we're teaching it continuous basis in the work environment as well. Like, don't show temper tantrums. Don't get so angry. Why not? Why is anger bad? Just because it makes you feel bad, that's now you're shutting that part of you down. So I want you just to be aware of that, and especially as a young child, as soon as they throw a temper tantrum, we punish them. So that's not no way to behave. You don't shout like that. You don't scream like that. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. What happens? We move them into the free zone, where eventually they stay. What happens? We eventually get them onto the medication because we're unable to help and support our young people. And the same with us as adults. Okay. So anger is good. It's really good. And in a business environment, how to encourage your employees to come out and have these discussions around what makes you angry, what makes you frustrated, how do you feel it, what makes you anxious, what are you scared of, what is your worries. Let's talk about these things. So you need to talk about these things so that it can come open, so you can find the solution, right? If you stay with it, you're going to have the traumatic shutdown that comes into your body. And then that is deep trauma release exercise that you need to do. Okay, so think for a second just, how that's sat for you. It's quite a lot of information. Some of them might be quite new concepts for you. So I want you just to sit here for a second, maybe even pause the video here and see what comes up for you. Okay, so I'm going to talk now through the different kinds of trauma that you experience. You get the acute trauma. So this is the one that most people talk about, is the big T, the big T traumas. And that is, say for instance, you experience death in your family, you've been through a divorce, lost your job, immigrated. There's a whole bunch of big T's, being abused. Things that stay with you for quite a long time if you've not had the resources to deal with it in an adequate manner. Okay. So I just want you to sit with us for a second, because I don't want a lot of people think of trauma and they think only of this acute trauma, and that's not the case. Okay. There's so many different kinds of trauma. And if we can all just learn to be more compassionate about us towards ourselves, as to, maybe I didn't have that big event, but I've had a whole series of smaller T's, smaller traumas throughout my life that I wasn't able to, or equipped to handle and move through. Okay. So this is the next one, which is called developmental trauma, and this is where most of us are at. Most of us been through developmental trauma. That is, in the most standard way that we talk about it, is when you were a young child. So it's from birth to 7 years old. That's the developmental trauma. But science has come back to say that it's not just in that early stage. It can be up until you're 18 years of age. And then it can also be as adults. If you've been continuously being bullied at work, or in an abusive relationship where you experience it day to day, every week, every month, that is the developmental trauma. Same in the workplace. If you work in a toxic environment and you just keep getting mistreated in your in the business. Okay, so this is the one that a lot of people are not aware of. So again, this is not for you to blame anyone. It's not to blame yourself, and it's just for you to be aware of it, so that you can understand there is support out there, and there is ways for you to manage and deal with the traumas in your body. Okay, so I explained to you early on about how it works, sort of freeze, flight, looking for the social engagement space. Um, and the developmental trauma stage, again, you've not had the capacity to work through the different traumas, and you've got a whole bunch of open loops in your soma. Okay. You might have heard of this. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACE. And this is just from 2019, they did the survey where 47% of the people that they interviewed experienced verbal abuse, 19% mental illness, alcohol abuse 16%, sexual abuse 7%. It's quite stark numbers if you look at it. And I hope this gives you a little bit of opens your eyes towards it's not just you, it's not just them, it's all of us. We've all been through some kind of trauma in our lives. So how do we manage it, and how do we move through it? This is a different kind of trauma, which is called the preconscious trauma, and that's when you're in your mother's womb. And I remember I told you about the twins who experienced certain traits. Perhaps the mother was highly anxious during this period of giving birth to her children, and that anxiety, all that hormones that you release, the cortisol that you release in your body, goes in your bloodstream, and you digest it. They've done research on people who come for counseling perhaps in their 40s, 30s or 40s, and they say, I feel like I'm suffocating all throughout my life. I always feel like I'm stuck, I'm suffocating. And then when they go to ask their mums, they say, "Oh, yeah, you were a breech child. You were stuck. You couldn't come out." Because maybe you look back and say, I've not had any trauma in my life. Comes from during the time that you were in your mother's womb. Okay. So again, no blame game. It's just for you to have compassion. You also get intergenerational trauma. So this is a photo of in South Africa where apartheid was rife. This was a horrific law where they separated people of color with white people based on the color of your skin. You were allocated housing, job opportunities, etc. So even children that was born after 1994, when South Africa became free, even the children growing up since then still have this trauma stuck in their soma of, white people can hurt me. They will be able to cause me harm. So they've got they can experience a lot of anger inside of them, or perhaps even the freeze response, and that is called the epigenetic gene in your body. And they talked a lot about that in the research they did with rats. So the first, so mum and dad rats, they shock their feet, and every time they want to go and touch the edge of the cage, they would shock their feet so that they won't go to the cage. Then what they did, they started introducing blossom cherry spray in the cage when they shock them at the same time. So then they identify the blossom cherry spray with pain. So eventually they didn't have to shock their feet anymore. All they had to do is spray the blossom cherry and they wouldn't go to the fence because they would be too afraid. And when those rats had babies, they would do the same thing. They would also be able to just spray the blossom cherry and the rat would move away, the baby rats. They didn't have to shock their feet or anything. They knew it's the epigenetic gene that was transferred to them. So it's like a knowledge-based transfer. That trauma get transferred to the next generation. Okay. Then we are all sitting in this one. We've all had a collective trauma of dealing with COVID-19. I think we all still get like the shocks when we think about it. Not the best thing to think back on. And I think if we think of more recent times, it's the war in Ukraine, same kind of collective trauma that we're experiencing, being on the lookout, being aware of what's going on around us, and then how do we treat ourselves? How do we get better after this period? Because I mean, it's only been 2 years after COVID-19, and I think we could all agree that more than half the population is still not recovered from that traumatic experience. Okay, mind blown. A lot of information, a lot to get through. I hope you are making notes, and you're welcome to send me your questions. I'm always happy to have one-on-one discussions with you to see how I can support and help you through the process. And this is some of the warning signs that you can look for in your company, or your friends, family, whatever you're looking at. They will have low concentration. Absenteeism would be very high. They will go into that state of overwhelm and perhaps even have that withdrawal of not being able to move forward. Okay. They can have heightened reactions. So they might be called the ones that There's the drama queens, people who always overreact to everything. So again, instead of saying, what is wrong with you? Can you maybe say, what happened to you? Okay. How can we build more compassion into our workspace and prevent all these things happening in our workspace? This is something from the NHS, and they just showed on what effects it can have on trauma can have on us. Higher risk of mental health difficulties, higher rates of substance misuse, further harm, contact with justice system, educational difficulties, early death, reduced opportunities. It's really rife, and it really is all our concern. It's not just a select few that has to deal with this, but all of us. How can we all try and see what we can do to create a better world, right? Okay, so this again is how it works, just through that freeze, flat, and social engagement. Um, I want to just talk briefly on, when we look at, I don't know if any of you have perhaps worked with anyone that is struggling with addiction or an extreme dependency on something, which is basically an addiction, and that had a traumatic experience. So you will often find the person going from one extreme to the other. And we've all heard the self-sabotaging habits, stop getting in your own way. It's a load of nonsense. There's no such thing when it comes to trauma. You're not standing on your own way. Your brain is working differently. Okay. So need you just to have a little bit more compassion towards yourself and towards the people around you so that you can understand this principle. So what happened is when that energy is stuck in your body, it constantly when anything happened in your body, when just going through your day to day, walking down the street, you are like in a constant state of high alert, just looking around you. Where is the next attack going to come from? Okay. So you never feel safe, but you're looking for it. So you go from that freeze response, like, oh, I'm going to shut down, to I must fight or I must run away. Freeze, run away. Freeze, fight. Freeze, run away. So that's how you work. Your body works continuously. And especially if you get triggered, if something remembers in your body that it's not been dealt with, and all you are trying to do is get to that in the middle, at the bottom in the ventral vagus nerves, where the social engagement comes in. You want to feel safe. You want to, okay, safe, safe. So, how do we build resources in ourselves to create this safe space for our teams, for ourselves, so that we can have a little bit more compassion, more mindfulness, more joy, being in the present moment, have groundedness? Um, and that's through the program that I offer. Okay, so we've done some research, and mental health is costing businesses in the UK between 53 and 56 billion every year. That's high numbers that is costing us due to lack of productivity or absenteeism or being at work but not being at work. How can we prevent that? How can we stop that from happening? There's a lot a lot of resources that I talk through in my training, but I'm just going to talk through three. So the first one is providing resources and support. Okay, so that is giving them a platform, giving them access to either alternative therapy or therapy. Don't 100% believe in just therapy, especially when it comes to trauma, because that's the bottom up approach, bottom down approach, and that is where um, you just talk about it. So it just keeps going around. It just keeps going back. So if you're not able to release that trauma in the body, or release the body, the subconscious mind holding on to that narrative, that story of where it origins, where it come from, then you're unable to move through. So it's really time for us as employees to start thinking outside the box and providing alternative solutions, because the same old that's been offered for the past 100 years is not working. um, creating a safe and supportive environment. And that, I believe, starts with training. You need to train your staff. Let them, can you imagine a beautiful workforce all coming together with this beautiful understanding of and compassion towards each other? It's like, looking at someone when something's not working and they throw a temper tantrum, instead of laughing at them or like avoiding them or shaming them for their behavior, you can go to them and say, "Hey, can I help you? I can see you're struggling." Because you understand that something happened to them in their lives that you can that you they're unable to digest it. I'm not saying taking responsibility away from people. That's not the thing. You have to take responsibility for your own actions. That comes with having that resources available, having that support structure available so that you can take ownership of your life. And I always use this analogy of um, I told you like some of the things that I went through. So when in 2017 I started my sober journey of becoming addiction. And that was, as you can imagine, quite hard, difficult to move through. But it came with, I was starting to have to deal with what happened to me as a child and the subsequent abuse that occurred after my mum committed suicide. So I was not able to be in a safe environment. So before this, that 2017, I had newspapers. So I was self-employed, which I built from the ground up, and it became my identity. That was my safe space. And when I closed that, it was like a big gap, right? And I went into overwhelm. I went into the freeze zone, and I complete shutdown, literally nervous breakdown. And it was only once I started getting, I got a half-day job where I was helping a charity with their events and fundraising, etc. And only then did I have a safe and supportive environment around me, because I knew that I was being cared for. They gave me adequate training. They gave me the resources. So I knew that, say I was ill today and I was having a mental health day, I didn't have to come into work, and I was going to still get paid. I would still, be able to pay my rent and everything at the end of the day. So I felt safe. I had a beautiful, safe, and supportive environment in this workspace. And it was only once I was there that I had the courage to stop drinking. So that was the next stage that I had to do. But I first had to feel safe. So I hope you understand what this is all about. It they provided with resources because they talk about it a lot in the charity of how they support people and the people that they support. So I had the resources. They created a safe and supportive environment for me to feel safe enough to say, listen, I need support. And I started getting the support, but they trained us. We had adequate training so that we had the knowledge and the resources to enhance ourselves and get better. And also, what helps a lot was, there was people with lived experience. Um, a lot of times we say, oh, but you've got HR and you've got this department to help you. But if the person who's in charge, if you don't trust them, then how are you going to open up to them? But if you know that someone has been through what you've been going through, chances are much higher that you'll be able to open up to this person and say, you know what, I'm actually going through what you told her earlier on about. I'm now ready to take the changes. Do you understand? And unfortunately, that comes from leadership. Leadership needs to come on board with this journey. Be authentic, be vulnerable, be willing to share something that was hard for you to share. And it can be as simple as a little story of when you were a student and you struggled with mental health issues. How did you cope? Just making yourself a little bit more open, humanize you, and people are able to trust you. Okay. Okay. So for every £1 that you invest in your employers, you will get £5.30 back. That's a lot of money. Okay. That's a big investment. So if you just invest £1 in your teams, individuals, you will get 5.30 back in return. So it makes financial sense to invest in your teams and your company. So I created this coaching program that specifically talks around trauma and release and how to um, deal with those unwanted trauma stuck open loops so that we can close the loops. Because we all struggle with change. Change is the big thing that we struggle with. And I take them from a space of challenging their comfort zone all the way to consistently celebrating their lives so they can have the clarity and the courage and the confidence to change. And what will you have? You'll have resilient team, you'll have creative teams, and you'll have teams that feel fulfilled, that feel happy. And that means marketing for your bank for your business. So again, it's not just good for your people, but it's also good for your finances, the economy of your business, to look after them. So I've got a special offer for you there, what I charge for my program, and it's a 6-month coaching program. These are some of the testimonials I have from the people that I've been supporting through this process. Um, I'm happy to talk you through it and see how I can support you with that. For companies, I've got a special offer for you. I can do a trauma-informed training for a really, really low price of $750 for up to 10 people, where I take them through this process and a lot more. So that's for you. Wellness days is not a nice to have anymore. It's essential. And we do offer alternative treatments because, again, we believe that the trauma is stuck in your body. So we help with getting that unwanted uh, trauma loops, help to close it, and help to release it in a healthy and safe environment. So this is only available to you for a very limited time. So please do feel free to reach out and set up a call to see how I can support you further. Okay, these are just some of the testimonials I had for away days I organized for companies. Um, it works. Like, I know it works. It's really definitely the best investment that you can have for your teams. So yeah, I want you just to maybe send me an email, send me a message as to what you thought was the most valuable, what you took away from this training. And this is obviously in time for time to talk. So how do you have these conversations in your workspace? Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a little bit of a better understanding of what trauma is and how you can become a trauma-informed organization. I did not talk a lot about all of that because it's a lot. There's so much to go through. But yes, I'm happy to have a discussion with you, one-to-one. So just let me know if you want to have that call. Again, thank you so much and have a beautiful, beautiful afternoon or evening, morning, whenever you're watching this. Bye.